in the Bible, it says, God became man so that man become as God is. Yes? The eternal, the infinite being became man, finite, temporal being slash becoming, so that man may become God. Only those who are self-initiative can be truly initiated into a path. Only those who don't need an external authority can learn from real authority. So the more one evolves, the more one becomes able to explore. At a certain level of consciousness, fear becomes impossible. So when fear shows up, you just be aware of it. And that awareness itself begin to burn the fear. And then fear turns into excitement. And I don't think AI can achieve spiritual intelligence. Humans need to evolve. Humans need to spiritualize themselves so that it can peacefully coexist with AI, at the same time enjoy their intuition, imagination, and spiritual creativity.
Hello, friends. Welcome to a very special episode of Potential Paradigms. This episode is about the future of humanity and the apocalyptic crisis that we as a civilization find ourselves in today. So for this episode, I have the honor of having with me visionary philosopher Yasuhiko Kimura, who caught sense of the tremors of the transformation we find ourselves in today for over 30 years. He's also known as the philosopher of change, and rightly so, as he has been exploring the future of human spirituality and what society could look like for over 3 decades. Yasuhiko has had a profound personal journey starting with a cosmic epiphany at the age of 16, where he caught glimpses of what the future human spirituality would look like. And this inspired him to study comparative mysticism, and since then he has been teaching all over the world and has written books on ethics, science, and consciousness. In our wide-ranging conversations, Yasuhiko shared insights on the coming shift in consciousness, which will shift our civilization from merely being focused on information gathering to cultivating our spiritual gifts of intuition, imagination, and creativity. He also believes that people coming together to form local communities of governance in what he calls Synergic Panarchies holds tremendous potential as the current systems of governance retire and dismantle. We also talk about the evolution of AI and humanity's role in it. So guys, this is a deep episode, and I hope that you will stick through the entire length as there are many insights. And lastly, please look in the show notes below to find Yasuhiko's incredible body of work. And also there is a list of words including concepts, books, places, and people mentioned in this episode, which I think you will find helpful. Please give the channel a subscribe and a like. And before we turn to this cosmic conversation, I would love to share with you one of my favorite quotes of Yasuhiko, which goes something like, "Vision without action is empty. Action without vision is blind. Ideology and opinion divide. Quest and commitment unite." Thank you so much for being with us today, Yasuhiko.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So as I was saying, you're known as the philosopher of change, and rightly so. And we find, and you started, as compared to myself, you have started way long, caught hold of this current of transformation and change that we find ourselves in today as a civilization. So maybe to begin there, that what made you interested in this? In the space of transformation and change of the potential paradigms, because this has become very apparent now in our civilization, but you had your fingers on the pulse some more than 20-30 years ago.
Well, when I was 16, I had what I call spiritual epiphany, cosmic epiphany. And that truly saved me from my fail, actually. And shortly thereafter, so after that cosmic experience, I felt completely at home with the universe. But encountering society, starting from the school and teachers and the classmates, and going out into the world, there was a lot of dissonance between my inner world and the possibility that I have seen and the actuality of people's life. After having studied in a Zen monastery and seminary, I went to India to study Indian philosophy. There I met a lot of people. And I was exposed to, although I was supposed to be studying more academically, I was more interested in other stuff. I went to listen to Osho. I went to listen to Krishnamurti. I met other spiritual teachers, and also I met a lot of young people from all over the world. And I begin to see what is happening in the world in the spiritual evolution department, so to speak. It became very clear to me that Buddhism and Zen Buddhism that I had studied, in itself is inadequate for the contemporary mind. And also this structure of guru-disciple is a beautiful Asian tradition. And you do need teachers. But the way it has emerged in the 20th century was not very authentic. And this whole mentality of depending on your external authority and not really thinking for yourself bothered me, and which was actually my original experience being in schools in Japan. One day I realized that, although I was a decent, good student, actually, I realized I wasn't thinking. I didn't even know what it means to think. And there was nobody around me who was encouraging us to think. So that was my original inquiry into spirituality, because in Japanese, to think, kangai, comes from this kamikai, which means to return to God. So thinking is a very spiritual activity. It's a divine thinking, divine imagination, which humans actually replicate in the form of human thinking and human imagination. And so from that, I have seen that in the Zen monastery and the Asian tradition, and also in India. So when I left India and came to the United States, I was seeking a new way of teaching spirituality, a new kind of paradigm for spiritual community. And let me go back a bit. And another influence was this Japanese Buddhist philosopher writer, who was not Zen priest, a different school, Haya Akigarashi. And he had written this essay, actually, not even a book, essay, which gave me the idea of a new kind of spiritual community. He was talking about, when you really achieve a spiritual experience, you become like a truly independent. You are being unto yourself. Your consciousness unto yourself. It's like the whole of the universe is within you. So you become truly sovereign. And he was hinting at the possibility of new spiritual community. It is a commune of independent sovereign beings. I'm kind of elaborating his vision. It was not as well articulated in that essay, but that's what I got. And so after I came to this country, and I read about Mr. Fuller, and then I read Giordano Bruno, and I became able to articulate what I had in mind since I had read that book by Hakegaras Haya. And it's called Omnicentric Civilization, an omnicentric society, omnicentric organization, where the centers are distributed and each person work together with one another to achieve individual sovereignty in the process of attaining spiritual enlightenment. After that, obviously, you're already sovereign. And so that has been what I have been doing in the last 30, 40 years, 30 years at least, yes. And it is not easy because people are used to having this external authority who will tell them the truth and what to do. And of course, it is important to have a teacher, but there's a way of teaching in such a way that you respect the student's innate individuality, which is in the process of blossoming. So it is, when you look at the New Age community, it is very much collectivist. And I was against that collectivism. We need to be in more and more individualized. At the peak of individuality, you actually meet universality. And I coined the term singular cosmic destiny to describe each human being. We are each a singular cosmic destiny. There has never been a human being like you before or after. Not only the a genetic, makeup. Nobody is the same. At the same time, the experience you're having, nobody had the experience before, and nobody will ever have that experience after. And as you can see, in the spiritual way of looking at the universe, we each are monad. We each are a microcosm. It is the universe is a macrocosm is aggregate of microcosms, and macrocosms is a universe unto itself. And that substance of that universe is our experience. And therefore, you are a singular universe in that sense. This will never be repeated again. So even if we take into consideration what is called reincarnation in many different forms, this particular experience, this particular monad has never existed before and will never exist again. And the experience you have had since you are conceived, since you're born, until you die in this form is unique. I can never experience your experience, and you can never experience my experience. And there's something very unique about it. And it is also one singular perspective in the whole universe. it is a unique cosmic address that you occupy. So on the one hand, when we achieve the truth we are seeking, and the experience of awakening we are seeking and we are achieving, there is a universality to this. It is universal. At the same time, because it is experienced by this unique singular monad, there is something unique about it. And when you meet an authentic spiritual master, you always sense there's something original about the person. They may be saying same thing, yet there's some originality. So Abhinava Gupta, the great Shaivist master, and Shankaracharya, great Advaita Vedanta master, they are about the contemporary. And on the surface, they say something different. Some areas, anyway, not entirely. There's a lot of similarities. You see, so there's a uniqueness, and their uniqueness not only comes from their own unique experience, but also they have a group of students to whom they're communicating. So it's a one-time event. And there are infinite number of, an increasingly infinite number of one-time events in the universe of infinite and eternity. So I also coined the term omnicentric, and so it is, the universe is omnicentric, and each singular monad appropriating this omnicentric universe and omnicentric world, there is a kind of some kind of synergy takes place between individuality and the collectivity. It is not the way that Bhaktivinoda sort of defined the term, but it is really there's a one and many impact one, and one impact many. A very, very dynamic evolutionary process. So that's, well, I don't know if I am answering your question, but since I was 16, that's a long time ago, and being a contemporary, I'm always sensing, what is happening in the world, and asking myself this question: how I can communicate better. So in one sense, I have been saying the same thing over and over again, but over the years, that same thing has been said in different way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is so rich what you answered, and so many things I was resonating so deeply. So I'm sure that we could continue to peel several layers of your very poetic and beautiful answer that I think is perhaps an essence of your own journey, or part of that essence. So it's very distilled and very rich.
One more maybe. So I wouldn't say new ideas, but it is like a new articulation that I actually, from the very beginning, once I began teaching, I use what I call a tri-formational method or model of learning and teaching. And tri, three, formational. One is information, and basically the entirety of our learning since our childhood and going through academia schools, it is information learning. You acquire information through reading, listening to lectures, or today watching YouTube's. And the people who are watching this program, they're listening to us. So it is people inform themselves. From that, they organize the information into a form of knowledge. There is another, and this alone will not bring into existence transformation. You gain more and more knowledge, and you gain more and more understanding. But you will not be transformed. And transformation requires what I call metaformation learning. Metaformation is, it's like in Christianity, it is called grace or liberation. And knowledge coming from grace, spiritual awakening or enlightenment, is categorically different from knowledge developed by the human intellect following classical logic. So you will meet a great intellect and scholar who can recite all the lines from ancient scriptures, who is not enlightened. And there are some simple man who has not read that many books, but somehow have this metaformation learning and has become awakened. And transformation happens with metaformation and information as a vector. And some people have only information and maybe a little bit metaformation, the transformation is like this. And some people who are not very informed, but has some spiritual experience, their transformation is like a metaformation. And ideal is that you have both, and then you move in this direction. This is transformation. The triformation, information, metaformation, and transformation. And initially, obviously, you don't have metaformation directly. But you accept this premise and begin to read the writings, scriptures written by enlightened beings, like revelations. And real scriptures are written that way. But some Christians believe that God wrote the Bible. Yes, that God, in the sense of a human being which achieved oneness with God. So, can I say this? So we do not want to neglect information learning. It is truly enriches us. And within this context, sometimes like a great scientist, they have an epiphany, and they bring in new knowledge. It is a form of metaformation, specifically for particular area. The metaformation in the spiritual awakening, you come to know the whole. And there is a way to set up your learning process in such a way that you continue to open your ears and eyes for the possible metaformation, possible grace. And you cannot plan this. You cannot cause God grace to take place in your life, but you can organize your learning process in such a way that you are ongoingly open for this vertical inspiration along with the horizontal information. And when you live this, you will have a little bit of transformational direction. So every authentic teaching of the East and the West is maybe reduced to one sentence. And that is in the Bible, it says, God became man so that man become as God is. Yes? The eternal, the infinite being became man, finite, temporal being / being becoming, so that man may become God. And information alone will never take us to that level. Each one of us has to have a direct experience of metaformation. But in our informational learning, having that dimension of metaformation and humbly and openly listening to the voices of those who have awakening, keenly aware of the fact that you don't really know what they're talking about, yet continue to listen. And that will create a kind of life that is different from unconscious living or purely informational learning. Or forget about everything and just becoming a devotee. And in a way, negligent of actual learning as human being. And you have the guru of, external guru upon whom you depend in the matter of thinking, knowing, and acting. So this is how one can be starting as a center of omnicentric spiritual learning community. Continue to acquire information and align yourself to metaformation so that gradual transformation takes place until when you yourself has a direct experience.
Yes, thank you so much. Quite a few themes were triggered in me, and maybe to reflect some of the. I think you sketched more of some of the earlier, bigger themes that you touched on, and it was just as you were speaking of metaformation. Since I have studied a little bit of Kashmir Shaivism, one of the terms that seems somewhat similar is there are two kinds of learning that in the Shaivite philosophy. One is called Bodha Gyan and the other is called Purusha Gyan. And Bodha Gyan is more intellectual knowing, and Purusha would be perhaps similar to metaformation or the descent of grace. And Kashmir Shaivism seems unique in the sense that it emphasizes both, not one on the exclusion of the other. Where they talk about saints and sages who have had direct experiences, yet there is no formulation, or the other side. But not that I figured it out, but it seems like even in my own path, that somehow the articulation that you were speaking of initially reading that essay 30 or so years ago, and then later on reading Buckminster Fuller and Jordan Bruno, I believe you said, and then articulating that vision or essay. Um, it it seems to me that it goes hand in hand. There is tremendous joy in articulation, but it also opens up doors for further descent of grace.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So when you mentioned being, becoming, it's really being, becoming, being with capital B, becoming being, a smaller being, which is becoming bigger being again. It is a process, yes. Yeah. You know, it is very difficult to actually articulate the knowledge you receive through metaformation. And probably that is the reason why there are differences in the teachings of different masters and different traditions. Because teaching is done in the context of, teacher imparting knowledge to students. And based on the culture and language they use, same thing need to be said in certain way so that the student can understand better. So, in an exoteric dimension, people only look at these differences, and they say my teaching is better than yours, and so on and so forth. But when we go into the esoteric core, there is like a truly unity. And some teachers are better in communicating than others. It does not mean he or she is more enlightened than the others. There are people like Sri Aurobindo, who is extremely articulate. Then we have Krishnamurti is also very articulate. So some people are not.
Which was the last name that you mentioned, Yasuhiko?
Krishnamurti. He is also very articulate, but he is kind of overly focused on one thing. Doesn't talk about the whole range of things. But anyway, again, it depends on the audience.
Yes.
And the difficulty arises with this. The logos that they are imparting has the dimension of logic. And the logic of the eternal, the infinite, is not the same as the logic of the finite. The logic of the finite is a special case, or limited case of logic of infinite. And the best way to actually express the logic of infinite is through poetry. Because when you want to make it like a mathematical logic, it is extremely, you can't capture it. Maybe the person who came closest to it is probably Hegel and Pascal. Divine logos is more than Aristotelian logic. And what we considered to be contradiction is not a contradiction in the world of eternal and the infinite. And that logos unfolding in the finite world create change. Therefore, somebody throughout his or her life remains the same human being at the same time he or she changes. In your tradition of Shaivism, Shiva can be like a purely one and all. Then out of Shiva comes into existence Shakti. And cosmic intercourse between Shiva and Shakti, this cosmic orgasm, this energy is spanda, vibration, which is a source of Maya and all of the becomings that we experience and we observe as universe. So Shiva is not Shakti, and Shiva is Shakti.
Yes. Yeah.
And you see,
Yeah.
when people somehow get exposed to this way of thinking, they open up their mind to something beyond what we can learn through our ordinary logic. We become more open to the logic of the infinite and eternal.
Yes. So maybe touching on an earlier theme, because I mean there are just so many wonderful themes here. Earlier when we started the conversation, you were speaking of the sovereignty and developing our independence and ability to think. And you also spoke a little bit about the guru disciple model, and this is an area that I have sort of struggled in my own journey as well, and I find myself coming more at peace with my own sort of archetype to and that's the word that's coming to me, is that I like to explore truths on my own, and also multiple variations and flavors of that. And so I had to reach the point of a self-surrender to that tendency in me, which I felt was not appreciated in every community. At the same time, I have come to find a value, unspeakable value of devotion, or the way I articulate is the ability to receive from teachers who might not even be here on this plane with us, or might be here, and somehow it's again is not one or the other, but somehow holding both of them together.
And respecting and devoting oneself to a great teacher is not the same as giving your power to that person and blindly follow or blindly believe in the teaching. And my point is, the before you become chosen, you need to choose. Before you become initiated. You need to initiate. It's like you need to ready yourself. And it is only you who can do that. And I think most fundamentally, it is our being completely honest with our own spiritual aspiration and trusting our inner intelligence to navigate in the vast ocean of spiritual exploration. And we need to accept the inevitable possibility of making mistakes. And but so long as we remain, so in a way, only those who are self-initiative can be truly initiated into a path. Only those who don't need an external authority can learn from real authority. And so, when you and I want to study Shaivism, well, first maybe you read books that are available, but eventually you want to meet the actual master. Same with everything, so I studied under 3, 4 Zen masters. Actually, one Zen master and his 3 enlightened disciples. Actually, so I studied them, and it is what a privilege to be with people like them. It is, in their presence, something happens. And none of my masters are scholars, and I wouldn't say they're highly educated in terms of book learning, but their depth of experience, direct experience, was quite remarkable. And you just learn, they transmit the state of consciousness to you. So I'm not against learning from teachers, but we need to, each person needs to be responsible and never give out the power.
Absolutely. I think that at the core, one is true, as you said, the being true to your inner development, to yourself as the compass. And yeah, it's phenomenal, because I think in a lot of some of the traditions that I've been exposed to, there is also a unity with let's say, someone in Kashmir Shaivism, certain saints or sages have shared the experience of unity with Abhinavagupta, for instance. Because I have become Abhinavagupta. So to me, that is also very mysterious, but it hints at that these ideals become alive in us. And as you said, the exploration is infinite, and to me that requires courage. And oftentimes I feel with friends on the path that there has to be some kind of fear that allows one to give all responsibility to one's guru, which is, I just want all of my decisions and everything to be taken care of by someone external. And somehow that to me indicates it defeats the whole point.
Yeah. When let's say in Shaivism, this Abhinava Gupta, the greatest guru. So unlike many other teachers who may never have actually existed on the planet, I seriously question that Jesus Christ was actually a person. But Abhinava Gupta was a real person. But then when we become at one with him, what does it mean? It means that he is a human being, but also there's a state of consciousness that he actually he was residing, or he was abiding, or he was at one with. And then becoming him means that you actually reside in that state of consciousness. Yes. So Christ is a state of consciousness, Christ consciousness. And we can actually reside in that state of consciousness. Yes. So they are like our evolutionary attractors in that sense. Yes. There's a possibility of being, and as we study and learn from the person, it is not what he or she said, especially when you're with a living master, you begin to actually tune in and eventually become at one with the state of consciousness he or she represents. And as a cosmic singularity, there's a flavor of that person is not the same as the flavor that you give to that state of consciousness. But as a state of consciousness, they are same and universal.
Yes, yes. It's interesting that you say that, because also I know that in mystical Islam, I've heard this at times, and when I heard it the first time, it was a little shocking to me, being from a Orthodox Islamic background, growing up in that culture in Pakistan, that Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, is a state that one can experience in mystical Islam. But in Orthodox tradition, of course, he was a person, and I mean, there's no conversation of you ever reaching his state, so to speak. It's always beyond reach. So even in the Indian culture, it's interesting because you have this dichotomy of reverence to the guru, and oftentimes it's to an extreme, and yet there are always tantric adepts. You can go to any monastery, any temple, any place divine being sat, and you could have experiences of unity, and you could have them with many masters. So it's paradoxical that in the same land you have these two sort of different ways to be.
Yes. It's in some way it's depending on the person's state of consciousness as such that makes a difference.
Yes.
One person is more attracted to the one way of one state of consciousness than the other, which is determined by the state of consciousness he or she is occupying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Going back to this transformational learning, so the vector of transformation goes this way. So deeper the metaformation and longer the information, transformation is greater. And so it is possible in the form of being human, that somebody who has greater informational, greater metaformational learning can have a greater degree of transformation, which is like a more richer state of consciousness. And somebody like, Abhinava Gupta, who had an encyclopedic knowledge of everything there to be learned, plus artistic talent and everything. Probably the state of consciousness, when he occupied, it must be extremely rich than somebody simpler. less knowledge, and had an awakening. In one sense, it's the same height of state of consciousness, but the richness will be much less. So you see, today we have more opportunity to have even richer experience than those who had this experience in the past. The amount of knowledge we can acquire today is so much greater. Imagine, if Abhinavagupta read Greek philosophy, Latin, and all everything that was written before he came into existence. In addition to everything was available in India. you know.
Yeah, there is an aspect of Kashmir Shaivism that I don't know too much about, but I have always enjoyed listening about it, which is that, of course, a lot of the tradition is about practices and tantric practices and levels of one's consciousness, like a map of consciousness and how to jump from one level to the next. And in Shaivism, they divide it into three levels.
Well,
And in spite that these levels are described, of course, you are at the whim of grace, where you can jump to the highest level from any level.
mhm.
But yet there are these elaborate maps. But another aspect of the tradition is cosmic exploration, which is uh, a little different than um, the transformation for the ordinary individual to jump from a lower level to the higher level. And they talk about the 108 or 118 worlds that they have explored. And I think it was Abhinavagupta's, the quote goes like, and this is the tip of the iceberg that I have experienced. And um, so I like that. It almost seems like he was also, or other masters will also have this capacity of being an astronaut of the universe. And
Mhm.
I find that unique because often in traditions the goal is is mukti or liberation, and in this one somehow there is this mentioning of cosmic exploration in addition to elevating your consciousness.
Longkempa, uh, who was the Tibetan Buddhist version of Abhinavagupta. He has written many scriptures, but one of which gives this, stage of development. The last one is wonderment, and now something similar to what you just described. After enlightenment, what happens? You explore the universe in wonderment, and then Master Dogen in his Shobo Genzo, he talks about it. There's so much more to know and explore in this universe. Yes. It's almost like omniscience is omniscience. It's because it reaches a state where knowing and unknowing becomes the separation and division between knowing and unknowing disappear. And how much the infinite can know about itself, how much the eternal can experience of itself. Obviously, it is infinite and eternal. And when you get to that level, it is really beyond knowing, beyond unknowing. There's something, I think wonderment is a wonderful word that we can identify. It is a sense of wonder, true wonderment. Mhm. Exploration. Yes.
Yeah, it's and for me sometimes I the unknowing is, I somehow see it, uh it feels that it has this quality of wonderment, but in my own exploration, I find that over time, even though I use the word unknowing, the flavor of what I experience with that is transforming. It's a perhaps moving towards wonderment.
Well, it may be just Wonderment itself.
Yes, yes. So many things we can talk at, but maybe I'll ask you somewhat a personal experience, and it seems that it might be relevant, and that is that in my own journey, I have an intuition that I want to explore in a fearless manner. What I find in myself is that there are residual traces of fear that, and this is an abstract word covering up certain like bodily sensations and things that seem to throttle, like I self throttle or self sabotage my own progress, as if I am not fully going. I can go on the accelerator, but I bring it repetitively, bring it down several notches, and I feel like um, that's where the embodiment comes. And the paradox to me in my journey is that even when one can have at different points deep states of transcendence where you are the God self, and yet you find yourself in this paradox, or I find myself in this paradox of uh, fear of exploration. So that is the work for me, where I feel like I am still continuing, and perhaps it's lifetimes of journey to embody the depths of being, and that becomes exploration. The more I embody the being, the more I feel like I have the capacity and velocity to explore.
So, evolution and exploration are the same phenomenon with two different, terminologies, words. So the more one evolves, the more one becomes able to explore. And, in one sense, when we go back to the being the monad that we are, in which the experience is the substance of this microcosm, there are so many thoughts. People say going through my head, but it is not even not a head, but you can definitely experience a thought going through. And we do not know the origin of those thoughts. And when we are not conscious, when we are not aware, there is a degree of chaos instead of being a cosmos. So our microcosm can be very chaotic or very cosmic, ordered. And to the degree to which we are aware of the whole, the lesser would be the chaos. And when there are more chaos, the thought of unknown origin has more influence over our overall experience. The same experience of excitement to explore the unknown can be interpreted as fear, because this thought of unknown origin interpret your excitement as such, and it is more our cultural programming. To me, fear is a negatively interpreted excitement. And the more expansive consciousness awareness is, and more cosmic our universe becomes, the more unified our thought. So wherever the thought came, once this thought becomes part of your awareness, it is no longer the thought of unknown origin, but it is your thought. And then also, then you become less and less reactive to the conditioned thought. And you begin to think for yourself inside the universe that is your monad. Then excitement of, pure excitement for exploring the unknown is understood to be excitement and no longer interpreted as fear. You don't say no anymore. Fear, when you excite and when you say no, then it becomes fear. But no, it is like, yes, I want to know more about this. Then it becomes excitement. Yes. So yeah, at a certain level of consciousness, fear becomes impossible. Yes. But we always go back and up and down. So when fear shows up, you just be aware of it. And that awareness itself begin to burn the fear. And then fear turns into excitement.
Mhm.
Some people become fearful. Some people become more like they lose interest. It's almost like they become kind of they feel bored. They feel lose interest. Some people become anxious. So depending on the person's basic conditioning, that fear shows up in different ways.
Yes,
Some people get
and
depressed.
maybe a related thread to reflect on is that the environment, which could be often in our culture right now, at least in the spiritual circles, trauma has become like has come to the surface more than before, and the interrelationality with other monads and welcoming trauma. Do you think that that also can result in some kind of an integration that takes us beyond? I guess in my case, at times I have uncovered, not by myself, but perhaps through a certain openness, certain past experiences or certain things have been brought to the fore and then have been absorbed back and integrated to a more holistic, freedom from a certain kind of fear. But it happens at the level of energy, a past trauma, where perhaps when revisited, not through psychotherapy, but through some kind of openness, and it brings a certain experience, being able to witness that results in some kind of healing. And do you think that there's a place for that? Or because you also talked about just witnessing the fear, but to me it looks like that the witnessing of the fear also can open doors to certain kinds of information.
Well, when we look at human history, people lived under extremely brutal conditions compared to us. In one sense, our life is much easier than before. So we never know how much trauma people suffered in the past. And so in any spiritual traditions, depending on the mentality and psychology of that time. There's always an element of healing in the process of their awakening. That's number one. And number two, today, I think there are two things going on here. One is definitely, we talk about the trauma more
Yes, there.
than before. It's funny. We have this terminology called the post-traumatic stress disorder. It was a new term for shell shock. They used to call it shell shock, but now they call it that more sophisticated name. But basically, we talk about trauma much more than before. And although humanity has suffered tremendous amount of traumas throughout human history, we have suffered a lot. Yes, humans have suffered. We may be suffering in a way more unique kind of trauma than before. And human system, we can take stress to a degree. Our body is not designed to take the stress beyond certain point. And when we look at the recent histories, let's say 20th century and into 21st century, we had the First World War One, First World War, influenza epidemic, and then Great Depression, and World War II. Now, in this 45 years, my parents, great parents, and so on and so forth, have gone through an enormous amount of stress beyond probably what human can take. So by the time the World War II ended, we can say that people are suffering from collective post-traumatic stress disorder. And I can definitely see my parents. Now they're both dead, but I can see. And imagine kids who grew up with the people who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And then those people who suffer from stress, they tend to recreate the stressful situation in their life. So you and I, you're much younger than me, but we have lived, we have grown up in a very stressful environment, schools and work. And if there's no stress, there is no life kind of. And in a sense, everybody suffers from stress that is beyond our human organism can take. It remains sane. So, in my opinion, this is my opinion. Although there is no words neurosis anymore in the medical dictionary, to a degree, almost everybody suffers from neurosis, which is like a healthy reaction to unhealthy environment, healthy reaction to overstressed life. So people are very neurotic. And so when we engage ourselves in this spiritual development and the healing of our psyche, we need to take this into consideration. And so what we call trauma need to be healed in the process of our growth. Otherwise, it can actually, you see, people who suffer from trauma, they don't take risks. They are very much into security. That's one of the reasons why the government has become so big. People want the government to take care of it, which is totally untenable proposition. But anyway, so people want security on the one hand, but on the other, they create a stress situation ongoingly for themselves and others. So this need to be addressed today. That I think is specifically contemporary psychological trauma, much more so than in the past. And so, yes, I agree that we need to address this, our psychological trauma, and especially the chronic stress that we go through. The people don't realize because they have been living under tremendous stress. They don't even know that they are actually suffering from some form of neurosis, some form of stress disorder. You see, everybody has to get up early. They have to go to work. So your body may need to sleep more, but somehow you get up and drink a cup of coffee and somehow force yourself to get up. And then you have to go to the party with people and you drink a lot of. And it's like your life is very, very unmeditative and very neurotic. And when you don't sleep well or sleep long enough, you're always unsettled. So you see, when you take on the path of spiritual transformation, you need to pay attention to this over stressful life. And you need to be able to sleep. Sleeping is extremely important. Dreaming is important, but also sleeping itself important. It needs to be an element of an essential factor in your spiritual discipline to get enough sleep. In ancient Greece, there was a tradition of incubation, hibernation. Your discipline is to sleep. I think instead of going to a psychotherapist, each person before you do anything, they want to really think about how they can sleep well, so that they can wake up well, literally, physically waking up. And that if you're constantly sleeping and you need some stimulants to be awake, you're already in the wrong direction.
So maybe touching back to a bigger theme that we started at the beginning, which was, we're speaking of potential paradigms, and that's something I've been exploring and having the opportunity of you being here. What are your thoughts on the emergent paradigms, which I feel like are sort of, unknown? Our interaction, we don't know. We find they are coming, but they are perhaps by their nature unknown. So maybe you can address something about how do you see the potential emerging paradigms, and then maybe second, if you like, is what can we as a civilization or as individuals do to so that we have this future that we know is possible?
Well, we use the term paradigm in a very loose way. When you want to be more precise, paradigm is a model that is accepted by large enough number of people, and they practice it so that it becomes a core of the culture in which they live. Yes. So just limiting this into a spiritual development. As I have foreseen, I think this transformational model of learning and self-development into spiritual awakening seems to be taking place without, having been ever exposed to, my program. With the advent of internet, we can literally study every tradition that has ever existed. Just going to, I have an encyclopedia, but you don't need to buy heavy books. You have a Wikipedia. It may not have really great information, but it's the beginning of moving into, getting real good information. And so when we will talk about something, we can just go into internet. So information learning, we have greatest setup for people. And also you can, when you go into YouTube, great teachers of today, you can listen to them in any tradition and the new tradition. Then if one teacher really, resonate with you, then you can actually become closer to the person. So this self-initiating initiative, transformational learning is already taking place. And that is a good thing. And it is not just a model, probably, although without having been articulated, it is transformational. Second, because now we have access to this different traditions in a societal level, what I call the omnicentric culture and omnicentric civilization is emerging. And old models thinking where you see one authority and the one we need to follow this particular authority is no longer working. So, well, of course, as you know, there are a group of people who want to depopulate and using AI want to control the rest of humanity. That will not happen. It is like going against the flow of human consciousness in its evolution. So we are moving in the direction of omnicentricity. And what will happen is, like a panarchy, we will have physically people will come together in smaller communities, independent, peacefully coexisting with others. And at the same time, everybody is connected globally. So you have a global online community of like-minded people with whom you can learn together, we can converse together. And then physically, you have local communities, basically self-sustaining, like the one that you live. So this is like what Bakumi Sakura said, think globally and act locally is taking place. Global, they say, grow local. And to me, this is a natural formulation of omnicentricity. And it's another name for this. I use this synergy, panarchy, synergy of panarchies. Yeah. And if this transformational mode of learning takes place, and people become tuned into the both informational and metaformational learning. Mutual cooperation amongst people will become significantly more efficient and present. So I'm picturing a very optimistic future in the wrong run. Right now, we are going through a very difficult time, all of us. It is a transition. And well, people will have difficulty because old mode of thinking and old system are dying. So how we can go through this transition? Dying system, and we are in the dying system, and the new system isn't born yet. So these local communities are there, the seed of new paradigm, new system. And we need to escape to this new communities and begin to live there, quite connected through the internet to everybody on the planet. Yes. So that's kind of a paradigm that is emerging, in my view, and which I actually sensed many years ago, maybe 50 years ago. Yes.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And yeah, that's why your insights are so useful, because you have thought about this for quite some time and been a part of this.
One more thing I would like to say, you've heard some of my conversation with Shrikant, and this I have been saying for a number of years. What comes after the age of reason? We are in the ending period of age of reason. Nothing is wrong with a reason. And but I think next age will be the age of imagination. And when people are talking about the new paradigm, I was emphasizing new paradigm is important, but probably more important is for us to be able to be supra paradigmatic or trans paradigmatic, being able to actually transcend the paradigm. And our mode of thinking and operating is paradigm bound. So when you become supra paradigm, trans paradigm, it is more like a pure state of open-mindedness. And the initial stage of this trans paradigm is what I call ontological immersion. So you ontologically immerse yourself into different paradigms. And so when we encounter different culture, different paradigm, we understand them in terms of our own paradigm. It is an interpretation, it's a translation. We have a set of paradigm and mode of thinking, mode of understanding. And when you encounter something you don't understand, you somehow figure it out. What does it mean? You are basically transporting their idea into yours, and then somehow you understand in terms of your own paradigm. When your mind is transparadigmatic, you can ontologically immerse with other paradigm. And you understand them in terms of their paradigm. And essentially, it is a function of imagination and intuition. It is not your logic. So understanding others, other different paradigms in terms of your paradigm requires an exercise of your own reason and logic. Ontologically immersing yourself in different paradigms and understanding their paradigm, their thought, requires that you use your imagination and intuition. Well, one thing I noticed that I do, and I understand very quickly. That makes me lazy sometimes because I don't need to read the whole thing. And sometimes I feel like an imposter because I'm speaking like an expert. I have just picked few things that I really got it, you know. And I realized that I practiced this ontological immersion for a long time. In some way, I have this since I was a child. I don't know why. And I suffered from an imposter complex for a long time until age of 35, 36. And I realized it is a kind of talent. So, I don't need to feel imposter. But and I analyze what I do. And somehow I truly stand under people, understand. And it's really, you use it is a function of imagination and intuit. In order to be an expert in their thinking, of course, I must study more. But basic understanding is accomplished by being transparadigmatic and ontologically immerse yourself through your imagination and intuit the essence of the paradigm, essence of logic. And that usually it is not difficult, actually, once you get this. Then so you can understand the people. You can understand the other way of thinking.
Yes. Yeah, I find that very interesting. Yeah, thank you for. It just seems like it's a torrent of information and poetry from what you're saying. Um, I guess one question I have in this is how, for the listeners and for myself, how do you separate between intuition and imagination?
Intuition is basically in, and imagination is young. It is I see human intelligence in four levels or four facets. One is computational intelligence. It is memorizing, information processing, and problem solving based on the program that it has acquired. So it is basically what computers do, and artificial intelligence is computational intelligence. And this is what the IQ test in part. So the people who have good memory and who can apply the program that they have acquired and solve the problem faster than other people have a high IQ. Yes, so that is a computational intelligence. And in this area, humans have been already surpassed by computers and AIs. And how far AI can go in computational intelligence is beyond our imagination, I would say. It's become an amazing, possibility. And the next level or next aspect of human intelligence is what we can call intellection or reason. And it is not computational in the sense that it actually creates its own program. It needs to create a way of solving in order to solve the problem. So how it shows up is like so there are two pieces of knowledge, and somehow you find the underlying pattern and you being able to integrate those. And it is something beyond computation, because you have to find a way, you have to come up with a new program to be able to do this. And I don't know, maybe artificial intelligence can now do that, in which case it also has this dimension. So let's say there are two people who has 140, 50 IQ. They're both very smart people, computationally speaking. But one has a greater interactive activity, will be a much greater scholar than the other. And people will see he is more intelligent. And sometimes, let's say a person has a 150 IQ but doesn't have this interactive. Somebody has 130 IQ but has higher interactive. This person will produce a greater interactive work. He has more knowledge, but this person has a more creativity. Now, intuition and imagination works with the dimension of the unknown. And intuition tap into the cosmic knowledge, the knowledge of the world soul. So you have not studied it information-wise, but from intuition, you tap into the, of course, the people who are materialists will not believe this. Well, there is a cosmic reservoir of knowledge to which you can tap. But when you tap it, there's the element of creativity. So his information can be kind of reconfigured to fit into what you're seeking. I think most of the great geniuses who came up with new theories, new insights in science, philosophy, they had that ability, or artists. Imagination is to create something that didn't exist before, and or new combination of things that have existed. So it is like a intuition plus and final, or the highest form of intelligence is spiritual. So intuition and imagination goes together, yin and yang. Imagination can supply new knowledge to the cosmic, reservoir. So go like this, yeah. Spiritual imagination is the way human consciousness and intelligence works, that is uniquely divine, in that knowing and known and knower are one. So it is like so you imagine in a spiritual intelligence, you imagine imagination, you think thinking, you know knowing. And so it is like a truly a source of creation. And William Blake called this the imagination with capital I. And he equate this with God. And humans can have that that imagination. And what that imagination imagines, what that the spiritual intelligence knows, is unknowable to the rest of the intelligences. Computational intelligence, intellectual intelligence, intuitive or imaginative intelligence. For them, it shows up as unknown. Because of the logic that I talked about. It does not fit into the logic through which it can know or understand. So to me, spiritual awakening is awakening the spiritual intelligence.
It's
Mhm.
beautiful. Yeah, thank you. And when I asked you this question, I felt that there was some deep connection between intuition and imagination, and I think you beautifully highlighted that. And the last part of what you were saying reminded me of, I think, in multiple scriptures, be it Kashmir Shaivism or Islam, there are these quotes of, God said be and it was, or similar in Kashmir Shaivism, they have the separation of the different energies like Icha, Gyana, and Kriya, where you have the will, knowledge, and action.
Yeah.
But at the highest point, Icha Shakti, or the Lord's will, contains all the other energies.
Mhm.
And as we come into this sort of from the Shaivistic map or the yogic map, as there is the descent of consciousness into creation, it begins with will, and then as individual beings, we have will, knowledge, and action. And the mastery is going back to the reverse, where perhaps it's the will that has been acting all along, or your will comes to be. Yeah, so
No, it
I would
is.
love to explore
Yeah,
William
yeah, yeah.
Blake's
Exactly.
writings.
It is. So look, up to this moment, when the cosmic consciousness, divine consciousness, knowing aspect has been kind of emphasized. Yes, knowledge. And then what you're talking about is that will part is emphasized. Well, in the West, Schopenhauer and then Nietzsche emphasized that dimension. Yes, and William Blake emphasized the imaginative aspect. And I think, depending on which aspect, because in will there is knowing and imagining there. In imagination, there is a will and knowing there. In knowing, there is a will and imagination. So it is like those three, they are one. And somehow we can make those distinctions. So depending on the time, and depending on the audience, and depending on the culture, and depending on what you want to bring forth, you can emphasize one aspect of the other. And in my own development, for a long time, I emphasize on the knowing and thinking. But now, as I get older, I'm emphasizing more and more imagining. And will is always there, but to me, imagination is more fun. Yeah, thinking moved into imagination. Thinking and imagination is the same, but thinking has a connotation of a little more logical. The imagination has real richness in this. But it is up to you. You want to emphasize the aspect of will. Absolutely, that's correct. Again, it is a difference in what do you want to emphasize.
Very nice. Yeah, I'll have to contemplate that, but I like that. And in will, the element of imagination, I think, is so obvious. I mean, how can you have a will without imagining something first? There,
But the fundamental thing is there. As I said, knowing, you thinking, you imagine imagination in the same way you will the will. And the original Godhead, whatever the Neshiba, Brahman, whatever the name, the original is that the source of all sources. And how they do that from 1 to 3, it seems to be almost all of the religion have this Trinity: Sat, Chit, Ananda, being, divine being, divine consciousness, divine energy. Ananda, to me, divine energy. And those 3 aspects. Yeah. So in your case, it's Shiva, Shakti, and Spanda. Probably. So depending on how you look at it, now we're talking about will, imagination, and knowing. And original, we can call it imagination or will or knowing. But you need to know. You need to willing. You need to imagining. And Gurdjieff has the world 1 and world 3. And he says, world 1, there's nothing we can say about that. And you have that triangle with 4 triangles inside. That's and the one that is reverse triangle at the center is that world 1 inside world 3. Yeah.
but one thing that comes to me is will, as in my own exploration in Kashmir Shaivism, the will of the Lord is, they describe it a little different as from the will of the individual, because there is already fullness there, and no sense of lack. That will have a different flavor than the will of a human, where there is something missing and you're moving outwards to seek completion. And I think I heard somebody use the word, that it's hard to describe, but it's more like acceptance, where when you get married, the husband says, I accept you as my wife. So it's more of an acceptance of, oh, I can do this, so I accept it, and so I move forward. Anyways, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So another word for this is absolute. And absolutely affirming itself. And for humans to achieve freedom, absolute affirmation is essential. 2 elements is necessary for humans to achieve freedom. One is absolutely affirming everything that is, which means you become the cause of everything that exists. So you can, when you absolutely affirm everything, which include the past, you don't see yourself as a victim of what happened in the past. You actually see yourself as a cause of everything that happened before. Is that the case? It is possible to see that way. Does not matter. It is you actually bring yourself to this state of consciousness. If you experience yourself as the cause of everything by affirming everything, absolutely. So much happened in the past. Long before we were born. So many tragedies and everything happened. And it is possible to affirm absolutely. Then you see yourself as a cause. Then you have a power to create anew. Obviously, God is what it affirms what He is. Yeah. But from this perspective, you begin to see the universe, including, and in a way, especially human history, as a big drama, theater, very suspenseful drama. And every kind of human is necessary. You need a Buddha, you need a Hitler. And God is praying everybody. And God is affirming everything. And God is responsible for everything. Once we see, is it true or not? Doesn't matter. If you are able to see this, there's a sense of freedom. Then you begin to act differently. You start to exercise your free will in a way that is conducive to creating more beautiful world. The reason why I like imagination is because will has it's a masculine. Imagination is shared by both men and women.
Yes, I like
That's
that.
one of the reasons
Yes.
why I like imagination. And so I want to see, and when we have the AI doing all kinds of far surpassing humans in computational and interactive intelligence, where we can shine as humans, maybe intuitive and imaginative. And I don't think AI can achieve spiritual intelligence. So, age of imagination, living with artificial intelligence, humans need to evolve. Humans need to spiritualize themselves so that it can peacefully coexist with AI, at the same time enjoy their intuition, imagination, and spiritual creativity.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. And actually, I have to say, I like, as you were saying, imagination as well, because I think at least in the culture, the word will is convoluted in English. Because if you look in Sanskrit, there is so many other words that
Yeah.
are synonyms, probably thousands of them. And will kind of, especially when you come from a sense of lack and the ego, the will has a very different masculine quality, as you were saying, than imagination. Imagination seems much more comprehensive.
Also, there's the element of play, playfulness. Leader, universe has a play. Yeah. And that's maybe the reason why the Hindus Buddhists call this word of Maya illusion, because it is divine imagination creating something, and it has a, in that sense, illusory quality. Because what you imagine is has a illegal quality, but it is real.
I heard actually from a contemporary spiritual luminary this quote that stuck with me for a while, and I think I've begun to understand it. Maybe similar to exactly what you just said. And the quote was, "Life is a dream, but the dream is real."
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, there are so many things we could unpack. I think that the because we're at the 2 hour point. I think we went into some of the overarching arcing themes, and I would love to return some point and actually dissect them to see how we can develop intuition and imagination. Um, was there something that you feel that you would like to add?
Your programs are very high level, and your YouTube channel is amazing. And I'm very honored to be invited, and I also enjoy speaking with you. So whenever you invite me back, I'd be happy to join you, and we continue the conversation.
Oh, thank you, Yasuhiko, and yeah, it really is an honor and blessing for me to be able to interact with you, and to have you also your blessings on the journey ahead. Um, and what is the best way for the audience? I know that you have a new website, a new portal now. If they want to get in touch with you, or I know you have also online courses. So, what's the best way to they can reach to you?
Well, I'll give you the link, and then maybe in this program, you can kind of a section where you have writing. You can just add this. Yeah.